Education is the single greatest indicator of economic mobility.
I am so excited for you to listen to this conversation today because last summer, as you may remember, there was a young mom that made national headlines and basically sent shockwaves through the political system and even like the media system at large when she won her special election in Iowa, flipping a seat, breaking the GOP supermajority in the Iowa State Senate. And this is so significant because this was the first election, and it was a special election, so it was like a one-off. But it was the first opportunity since 2024, since Trump won again, to kind of have a referendum on how that was going, how the public was perceiving him. And it was in Iowa, which is, as I'm sure you're aware, a typically very red state. And she didn't just win, she overperformed by 22 points. She killed it in a district that not even a year earlier had solidly gone for Trump. And I am especially lucky because this is my friend, Catelin Drey, who is now Senator Dre. And I have had a front row seat for the past few years to her rapid rise, and I'm like not even a little bit surprised. I first met her when she was running an account called Moms for Iowa because just like me, she didn't know what to do and was upset by things that were going on and felt like people had questions and they didn't know what to do. And so she kind of raised her hand and said, okay, I'm going to do something. Her story gives me so much hope because she's like us, she is just like a working mom. She's busy. She's doing dishes. She's doing school pickup. And also she ran for office. She kicked the Republicans' ass. And her first session hasn't quite started yet, but she is already making such massive waves. And to see how well she has connected with people during her campaign and since she's been sworn in, that is the stuff we need to see. Because again, in a state like Iowa, she proved that if you just show up, if you're authentic, if you're consistent, if you don't think about the perfect thing to say, you just say what you mean and you connect with people over the issues that you know are important to them or they're struggling with, it works. We're not too far gone. And Catelin is proof of that. I also just wanted to note quickly that when the episode starts, it'll sound like it drops in the middle and you'll wonder if you missed the beginning. You didn't. I asked her a question when we started and then we just decided to get into it right away, of course, as we do. So we go over that and then eventually like halfway through, we circle back to the intro and get there. This is Motherhood for Good with Kate Duffy. And here is my conversation with Senator Catelin Drey. First state approved for federal education funding waiver.
Yep, this was my exact concern, is that federal funds are dedicated to rural, low-income English language learners, special needs kids, and that money is going to get diluted. Let's just talk about, I think my biggest concern is diverting money away from high-need populations, and part of the oversight that comes from the Department of Education at the federal level, or has in the past, is that they are dedicated primarily to special education students, special needs students. So that's English language learners, that's kids that are on IEPs, that's kids that have severe and profound mental or physical disabilities. And the reason that those kids need more oversight is because they have different needs than a standard student population. And the really scary thing and the hard thing, especially in Iowa right now, is that public schools serve every kid that shows up on their doorstep. And we passed, I think it was two cycles ago, the years escape me, but we passed easily one of the most fiscally irresponsible bills in state history, where anyone at any income level can qualify for a private school voucher. And we have like a significant majority of our students don't even live within like a 30-mile radius of a private school. So we are diverting close to $1 billion out of our public school system into private schools. Now we're simultaneously being able to divert federal dollars that are dedicated mostly to those special needs students who are in public schools, because a lot of times private schools don't have the resources to serve higher needs populations, or they'll just say like, we don't have the right service for you, and they deny them, and they're able to do that because they're a private entity. And so we're just funneling money away from the kids that need it most at every level now, which is really, really scary.
What was their reasoning? I'm assuming this was Republicans who
Correct.
did this. Like, what was the reasoning behind taking away the income gap, allowing any family with any income
Honestly,
to receive a voucher?
I can't understand it. Legislative session starts on January 12th, and Democrats are still in the minority, right? When I ran in a special election at the end of August, we broke the supermajority in the Iowa Senate, but we are still the minority party. And so we have some authority to push back on cabinet nominations. They'll have to negotiate with us on some things. But truly, this was such a controversial bill to begin with that when the governor first introduced it, a lot of rural Republicans said absolutely not. And she primaried successfully several of them. And it was a deeply unpopular bill. It is still deeply unpopular with education advocates, right? I think what is so just devastating is that we have blown a hole in the state budget because of other irresponsible Republican policies. We've, removed a tiered income tax system. We, in my area, are a property tax poor district, so our schools are underfunded to begin with. Like, it's all of these layers to a pretty terrible onion at this point. Mm-hmm. And it just does not seem like Republicans have an appetite to actually help people. And so I don't know. The long answer is all of that, but the short answer is I honestly don't understand why there's not an income cap.
Well, and I would imagine when you were going around talking to folks, and as you talk to people right now, I mean, here in Wisconsin, I think when there's federal politics, which is all the news and all the noise and all the stuff all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And state politics is more nitty gritty about the things that people are dealing with every day. And education is a really big part of that. And here in Wisconsin, we're hearing a lot about education, public education versus vouchers, mm-hmm. and then also property taxes and how those are tied together. And it seems like despite all of the polarization on the two sides of the political spectrum, it seems like most people here in Wisconsin are in favor of public education and dollars going to public schools. Right. What are you hearing in Iowa about that?
I think it's really similar, and I'm actually remembering the Substack that you put out about your public education funding, and I was like, this is exactly. I mean, it was like word for word exactly the same issues in Iowa. And like I said, it was an overwhelmingly unpopular bill when it was first introduced, even when it was passed. And I think the other thing that I really hear from people is like, we didn't want this and now we're stuck with it. And how do we undo it? And unfortunately, I think we will go the way of Kansas and Arizona in terms of state budgets, what happened when they introduced private school vouchers. And you can call them educational savings accounts or school choice or whatever you want to call it, but it's a coupon that mm-hmm. lets you, reduce your tuition price at the same time that a lot of those private schools are raising their tuition. So now we have an ecosystem where most of the people that are utilizing a voucher were already in private school. So it did nothing to actually level the playing field in terms of who had access to private school. And then you're seeing those private schools make huge capital improvements because in Iowa, there's no oversight. Once those dollars leave the state coffers, they go to a private out-of-state corporation that then divvies up the money, and we have no insight into how those dollars are being spent. Zero.
Exactly. Alarm bells going off in my head. That's the silence you're hearing.
Yeah.
And I mean, with this article I was just looking at, and we were just talking about with Iowa becoming the first state approved for federal education funding waiver, and that's I need to look more into that, but Linda McMahon is saying that, well, the money, this is part of the dismantling of the Department of Education.
It absolutely
they
is.
want, which is only a portion of funding that schools really get is federal, but also what that federal Department of Education does is bring accountability. And like you said before, make sure those students who really need it most, the low-income students or students with disabilities, are not falling through the cracks. And so if they're giving just a lump sum of money to Iowa and saying, okay, Iowa school ferry, do with it with, who is that person that then is who's deciding in Iowa then what the money is used for?
Our Secretary of Education is Mackenzie Snow, who has never spent a day in a classroom. She is not qualified to teach in an Iowa classroom. She doesn't meet the credentialing to be a teacher in the state of Iowa. She was a Betsy DeVos plant and was installed, I think, 2 years ago, which is part of the reason, right? I think she was one of the ones that passed by one vote. And so that's why this, like, my race really mattered, because we could have stopped that had we not been in the super minority, right? They just kind of forced that upon us. But from my understanding, it's Mackenzie Snow who gets to decide.
Which is it appointed position or elected position?
It's a cabinet appointment.
Okay.
And so when she was going through the appointment process, she had to be approved by the Senate.
Right.
And she was appointed, I believe it was by one vote. I think she was the one that was especially controversial that snuck through by one.
Good. Well, we'll see what happens with that.
If I could really quickly, the finer point, and I think you talk a lot about this on a variety of issues, right, is that follow the money, right? So you think that it has this like beautiful idea of everyone's going to be able to choose the right school for them, if that's homeschool or if that's private school or if that is a public school, right? They can decide. And then we are systematically removing money from the largest system that serves everyone who shows up at the door, regardless of income or race or class. Nothing factors into how students are served in a public school, right? And so we say, well, the public schools are failing, so we should divert money away from them to a system that works, which only further exacerbates and snowballs that problem. So the entire, I think, motivation of this is to dismantle public education. And that sounds alarmist, but we read Project 2025 for fun.
I don't think that is alarmist, because they have been like openly talking about that since the campaign trail. Trump has been talking about it, and a lot of people on different state levels have been talking about it. And we see in different states, they want the 10 Commandments in school and Bibles in school. They want a more Christian-based education. And they want to be able to have those private dollars and do whatever they want without accountability.
And to benefit their small chosen group of people, whether that's the private corporation that gets to take a cut of the voucher money to then disseminate it to the private schools, who also have a private board of directors and private investors, whatever that is, right? Like, the money diversion is privatization, and Iowa has struggled with that in our mental health system. We've privatized Medicaid and Medicare, which has been detrimental to actual service to patients. Every single time we see a privatization effort, the end result is that people get worse services.
And this is all for school, at least. The privatization of it is fairly new in terms of like the last few decades, I believe. I think actually Wisconsin was one of the first states to like introduce the voucher program. And it's tricky because it was first introduced with like Milwaukee in mind. And like, I think the initial intention was like for students to be able to, if they didn't live where there was a good school, to be able to go to another school. But
why do they live where there isn't a good school? Because there isn't enough money in that neighborhood to sustain it. Because they don't have the resources that it takes to hire and retain good teachers, right? Like, I had this conversation at a public forum before, as a citizen, and I looked at one of my now Senate colleagues and I said, okay, so if money isn't going to solve the problem in public schools, what will? And his response was, well, it's about how the money is allocated. And I just stopped him and I said, okay, so money is the fix, but you won't give more money to public schools, even though you are admitting that money would solve the problem.
I mean, they are starving the public schools of funding and then talking about the poor performance of public schools and the bad testing, but not talking about the fact that they have starved them of funds. And so they've like engineered this whole thing. And it really like kind of overwhelms me greatly. I don't know. I try to look at states that are like doing it well, that could be a model. Cause like it's especially those of us who have kids and even people who don't have kids. Our nation was built on public education and that being
it's the great equalizer, right? If somebody's going to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, which is like another great mantra, that like you have to have bootstraps to begin with. You have to see how that might work for you. Like the systemic problem is only exacerbated when you remove an educated population. Like education is the single greatest indicator of economic mobility.
So why not cut it off at the knees? Okay, well, we're talking to Senator Catelin Drey from Iowa, my good friend, and I'm so excited.
And I was like, should we just close our personal relationship? And also, may I fangirl for just a moment? When you were like, will you come on my podcast? And I was like, this is a dream. Because
I feel silly because I'm like, my podcast that I like randomly do whenever I feel like it, and like it's very casual.
I think you are such a good example to me of like being deeply intelligent and highly motivated, and also just being like, I'll figure it out and I'll do it when I want to do it. It's truly incredible.
Well, thank you. That's just like how my brain functions, and like being like in the space of like new media and being able to do what I want, it works out well. And I also think, I mean, I firmly believe, like, I wish more people really only talked when they had something to say. So yeah, thank you for coming on my once every once in a while, whenever I feel like doing it podcast.
I felt like doing it today, so this is great timing.
The famous senator from Iowa. Okay, for anybody who's not familiar with your fame, can you please explain who you are to them?
Well, yes, that's so kind of you. I am deeply grateful that I have a 5-year-old at home to keep me humble, because otherwise, like, you can't drink your own Kool-Aid, and I don't really want to. I find myself to be quite insufferable. But I am Catelin Drey. I was a 1st District Senator. I was elected in a special election at the end of August. The previous senator in my district passed away after a fairly lengthy battle with pancreatic cancer. He was a Republican. Iowa has been under a GOP trifecta for the better part of the last, I want to say 2 decades, but I know it's at least a full decade. And so my win broke the Republican supermajority. I think I ran at a time over the summer where we saw a lot of really heinous stuff coming down from the federal level, where people were just really desperate to feel any kind of momentum and joy and action. And so, and there wasn't a lot going on, right? It was right before school started. But I ran because I wanted to be able to look at that 5-year-old little girl and say, like, when it felt like everything was falling apart, I did everything that I felt capable and equipped to do to try and fix it and make the world better for you. And that sounds like so trite and cliche, but it's like, there is nothing truer to me than like the desire to make the world better for our kids.
And how did you, and we'll talk a little bit more about like how you came to that decision, but how did you get involved with politics? Because like you said, yes, we are friends. We met online, but have become friends in real life.
Yeah.
Because you started an account, Moms for Iowa, but also, and we've been friends for a while, and I've like realized you actually, even though you say you weren't involved, you seem to be involved in the county party, and you kind of know how the inner workings go. Like, what's your path with being politically involved?
Well, I have told people in the past, like the people that I went to high school with are not surprised that I grew up to like lecture people about the rules on the internet or otherwise. I've always been aware and passionate and opinionated. I think just by nature of being like an eldest daughter and an empath, I don't want other people to hurt, I think is like the umbrella that all of this kind of fits under. But I didn't and maybe still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But I studied Spanish and photography because my parents were like, you'll never make any money as a photographer. Graduated college in 2010. You know, the 2008 financial crisis hit the Midwest a couple years later, right? We're always kind of behind that curve a little bit. And so I actually spent a year teaching in Honduras at a bilingual school because I knew that was the only way I was going to really be able to speak Spanish and practice and like increase my fluency. And then I came back, and the first like job I had in the US was working as an in-home social worker. And I grew up in a pretty like typical Midwestern middle class family. My mom was a public school teacher. My dad worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service, so was a Department of the Interior employee focused on like wetland conservation and management. He worked really closely with farmers in North and South Dakota over the course of his career, making sure they had, you know, what they needed in terms of land drainage and appropriate soil and stuff that I'm not as well versed in as I should be, while also making sure that our wetlands and our wildlife was well protected. And so there's always kind of been like an undercurrent of public policy is really important, but it was never like overt necessarily. It was just kind of like what you did. And both of my parents were really involved in our communities. And so it was just kind of like in the DNA of like your existence as a community member. But after I came back and was doing in-home social work and realized how wide the diaspora of personal experience was, like I don't think I truly realized like how good I had it until I saw how truly awful it could be, and that's for, you know, kids and families alike. And then I kind of bounced around. I did like financial services for a while, banking and mortgage loan processing, which is like also a lot of rules and regulations, right? And then in 2016, I needed to feel useful. And so I went to work for our local public schools foundation and got to see kind of firsthand what happens when a school district doesn't have the resources that it needs to support really robust, exciting programs. And so I helped fundraise for a career and technical education campus here that has since been opened, and just seeing, you know, teachers have the ability to take like 2 nickels and a stick of gum and make incredible magic, and seeing the ingenuity that was coming out of classrooms and understanding that kind of work that they were doing has really lent itself now to this. And then from there I went into just like private marketing, strategic communications. And so there's, like I said, there's always kind of been this thread of like awareness of public policy and how different strings, when you pull on them, can affect different things in people's lives. And so at the risk of sounding very woo-woo, I think the universe has always been kind of conspiring to lead me to this point. But I think that the biggest thing truly was like seeing the ways in which my elected officials in some instances were responding to legitimate questions and concerns, and the flippancy and the dismissiveness that I was met with really led me to say like, oh, I'm gonna sit in your seat one day. And it just happened sooner than I anticipated.
I didn't know that much about your story and your background and growing up. And I think it's, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about, all of these questions I get from people of like, how do I talk to my kids about politics, about what's going on? How do I do all this? And just hearing you say that, it's like, you don't have to overthink it. And it doesn't always have to be a conversation. They're going to see what you're doing. They are going to see you calling and you going to things. And like, just like you said, it was just a part of your life. It was a part of your family, public service growing up and being involved. And I think that's really important for people to hear. You may have a future state senator on your hands if they are watching you, like, call your representatives and go and do postcards or go to whatever.
Yeah.
Just like living that life and being that example, and not having it be a thing you add to your checklist, the never ending to-do list that all parents have, but like,
Yeah.
just having it be a part of who you are and what your family values are, I think goes so much further than we give ourselves credit for. And those, I mean, the kids, they're watching and they're
little
sponges.
Yeah. She said to me, well, I'm going to be a state senator. And I was like, I think that sounds like a great idea. I think that's great. And like that just like you can't be what you don't see. It's like, it's that exactly. Right. And like thinking about her having that thought of like, well, how hard could it be? My mom does it. Right.
I mean, that's amazing. Going back to when this first came up and you had like maybe had it in your mind, and you were running Moms for Iowa on Instagram and building a community there, both digitally and in person, and helping other moms and women and people understand how to take action, what to do. When this opportunity came up for you to run, I'm trying to remember, because I'm sure like we talked about it, but I don't remember. Did you even have any reluctance, or were you like, let's go?
It was pretty much like, okay, we'll figure it out. And I had said to my husband, I was like, I think I want to run for like city council or like county. And he's like, no, do something state.
He knows you. He knows that eldest daughter energy. He's like, no. He seemed like he was so supportive throughout the campaign, which is just amazing.
It was really precious. And like, and that's the other thing too, right? Like that example to our sons and daughters, right? To see, a man and a woman in a heteronormative marriage where the guy's like, I'll ride shotgun on this one. You take over.
Right.
And he was like behind every step, right? And no reservation, no ego, just
making
gas.
it work, being there for you. Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And we love, shout out to husbands who are willing to step up and roll up the sleeves and do all of the dishes and laundry.
Correct.
Mine.
Yeah.
What was the experience like besides, I mean, it was a whirlwind, right? Because it was a special election. So it was a lot more condensed than like your typical election timeline. And I know, I mean, you were all over the place knocking on doors. Was it what you expected it to be? Was there anything that like really surprised you?
The most surprising thing overall was just the level of attention and enthusiasm that came from kind of all corners. Like a random Substack that I had never heard of, Wolves and Sheep, they like publicized the race, and we all of a sudden, like, my donation page started lighting up, and we're like, where is this coming from? Like, we legitimately did not know. It was like very organic and so surprising. Like, and again, I think it was just really because people were desperate to do something that felt productive at a time that still feels really scary and dark. But now I have the luxury of competing with all of the other candidates across the country that are, trying to figure out how to get their dollars and cents.
At that time, with your race, it was getting national attention. It was a very big story. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could not scroll any social media platform on the night you won without seeing your name everywhere. You got a shout-outs from everybody. Pete Buttigieg, President Obama. What level of dissociation did you need to be in to like process what was happening?
Yeah, I mean, this is like a deep look into like how I do anything that might have big feelings for other people. But like when when President Obama posted on his social media, or when his like social media team posted on his social media with his approval, right? Let's not like go too far down the rabbit hole, but but it was like some lovely friends from the internet had sent me a beautiful charcuterie board that I hadn't eaten because I was like so overwhelmed and crazy. And so I'm like standing over my kitchen counter, like unpackaging crackers and cheese like a raccoon over a dumpster. And then my phone just keeps like going off. I'm like, what is happening right now? So it's just like a very imbalanced like level of like, you think it's going to be one thing, and then really it's like your day-to-day life is still quite the same, where you're just like holding on for dear life. Well, all of these people that you could never conceive of are thinking about you and wishing you well and like lifting you up in a way that you didn't think was possible. So like that part of it, I think that's probably the most surprising part, is like people in rooms you could never have imagined setting foot in are speaking well about you.
Yeah. And I think actually from my own experience, knowing other state legislators too, I think the state lawmakers are like at this very unique position in the universe where they do have like one foot in a totally normal life with the mortgage and the groceries and all this stuff, and then the other foot in this crazy larger narrative where it's all connected, and like President Obama does care about that race because it signals other things, and it sends waves out to everything. And so as a state legislator in particular, you are like living in both of those realities, where obviously a US senator, they're in a different lifestyle sort of to a point, you know?
The strangest or like funniest thing is thinking about like how small those worlds are at the same time, when like at the end of last year the Democrats put out a graphic with like Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill, Zoran Mamdani, me, like my face is in the middle of this graphic with all of these other freaking all-stars
party list I would ever.
And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And that's what I was telling people too. Like, I'm still just like a regular lady. Like, as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to pick my kid up from school. I'm going to argue with her about taking her shoes off before we come back inside. Like, I'm going to figure out what I can convince her to eat for dinner. I'm going to scratch her back at her insistence while she falls asleep, right? Like my day-to-day life has not changed that drastically. It's just like I'm just going to a different set of meetings now.
Yeah. Well, and I guess, okay, so that segues well into something else I want to talk about, which is being a mom, why we need more moms in office, but also the difficulties and logistics that come along with that. And I know you and I have had thousands of conversations about this. And I know there's a lot more people, and women in particular, considering a run for office. What advice do you have, or like, what's the real story? How do you balance? Yeah,
you don't. I mean, like that's such I hate that word. I think you make room, and like your life makes room for the things that you can prioritize. And I deeply understand and recognize that I am in a very different position than a lot of other people who might consider this, right? Like, my husband has a fantastic job, which also affords him some level of flexibility. And my previous, I don't know, we're calling it legislative leave of absence. My previous position also had an insane amount of flexibility, a deeply understanding small group of coworkers that said like, yep, we understand that this is really important to you. We will figure out how to make this work, both during the campaign and then as I was ramping up now to be in session. And I think, like I said, you make room for the things in your life that matter. Because like the same very much could be said for you. Like, how are you managing infant care and the school schedule and an Instagram and real life community of 100,000 people that demand your time and energy and attention, and like in a very similar way, you are accountable to those people, and like we're figuring it out. Are we nailing it every day? Absolutely not.
No, that's why I have, well, the way I do it is I have 26,000 unread emails and like
I've seen
109
the
unread.
screenshots, and it makes me physically ill.
I know, we're very opposite that way. I'm bringing the type B energy, and you are like the older sister I never had who is like, get a spreadsheet. Get those notifications off your phone.
Can you just turn them off? It's not even that they're unread. It's the little red circle. Like,
well, in my mind, I think I'll go back to it. It's like pressing the snooze 1,000 times, you know.
Which I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think women have this magical way of making anything work, and I imagine that it is just beyond gratifying to meet people and work for them and talk to them.
Freaking incredible. Can I just say the number of times that I have shown up to a meeting to which I've been invited by constituent groups, so superintendents, healthcare professionals, daycare people, right? Like childcare. They're like, thank you so much for your time. Farmers. The Farm Bureau was like, we're really honored that you came. And I was like, this is my literal job. Who's not showing up? I'm like, stop being thankful for me doing the bare minimum. And like the gratitude is so lovely. But I'm like, have we set the bar so low that like just being a warm body in the room is sufficient? Because apparently by that metric, I'm nailing it.
Which I think is another, as I'm talking through the blockers that some women think of when they consider this, I am speaking from personal experience of considering these things and looking through the blockers. So there's obviously the logistics of time, flexibility, like age of the kids, the money.
The money.
Well, that's the thing too, that it's just like, and you touched on that, and the fact that you touched on the things that make it possible for you to do this.
Exactly.
And that is part of it. Everybody always wants people to run for office, but we don't talk as much about like the barriers that make it really hard for working class people to run for office.
It's because like the health insurance, the health care is pretty good at the state level. The retirement plan is pretty good, right? You get the public pension. And so it is like a ticket for a lot of older folks who are retired to say like, oh, I'll just, it's like a side hustle.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And we need people who are like
in the trenches.
Than more than that.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too. The people who are closest to the pain are closest to the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And so like moms know what the solution for the childcare crunch is like either open up more spots or get me some daycare subsidies. It's not that hard to figure out.
Right.
And now
it's
we're
really
talking about like a federal childcare funding freeze. We've got like, we have a center in my area. They have 50% of their population is on daycare subsidies, is on like private or state pay, excuse me. And now we're talking about a freeze in childcare funds. What happens to the 50 people that are probably women, right? 50 women that are employed at that daycare center working for $14 an hour. So not a ton of money by any stretch of the imagination. But those funds dry up, those spots go away, that's cut hours. Parents not being able to go to work because they don't have a place for their kids to go. The solutions are not tricky, but when your lived experience is your kids are 50 years old, 40 years old, like you are so far removed from that conversation, it doesn't rate.
Well, and those solutions aren't tricky, and they're not unheard of. In fact, they're figured out and they're being applied in so many different industries that our government subsidizes. Like it happens all the time, but corporate, not with childcare.
Yes, yeah. Because it's women's work, and women will make room in their lives for the things that are necessary. So we will just figure it out and go on our merry way and try and like survive again with our 2 nickels and a stick of gum.
Yeah, we really will.
Super uplifting.
I mean, what are you anticipating or looking forward to or nervous about as you look forward to like starting your first session? And interacting with Republicans and people who probably disagree with you on a lot of stuff, but potentially needing to work with them. What are you like thinking about all that?
Yeah, I think we're not always giving enough credit, and we've talked about like the purity test, right? I think we're not always giving enough credit to people who we might have one thing in common with, that like we can maybe find a way to figure it out. And again, that will be the nature of being in the minority party. I also think like Republicans in the state of Iowa are a little bit nervous. I think we had another special election on December 30th. There was the last special election, right? And Renee Hardman was elected to fill a vacant seat that was left by the late Senator Claire Celsey, who was also a Democrat. Renee blew the doors off, overperformed by 43 points. Like, insane. It was like 70% of the vote went to Renee. And I think Republicans are rightfully nervous about what happens in the midterms. And so I do feel like I got a little bit of swagger in my step as I'm going in. But I truly don't know what to expect. And so I'm going to, probably spend the first week or so kind of figuring it out. But I also am really thankful to have a pretty experienced Senate minority leader in Janice Weiner, who also worked her butt off in my election and in Senator-elect Hardman's race and the first Senate special election that we had a year ago, which was really kind of the bellwether indicator. Mike Zimmer won in a much redder district than I did. And so we're 3 for 3 in special elections on the Senate side, and that's pretty encouraging. We've seen an overperformance of at least 20 points in every special election that we've had in the state of Iowa in the year 2025. And so, I'm cautiously optimistic, I think, but also realistic about what will actually happen. We have a lame duck governor who's trying to force a carbon capture pipeline down our throats and really seems to want to just take as much public education money and success away as possible. So I have to be realistic about those things, but I also cannot let myself get lost in like the hopelessness that sometimes seems to be everywhere at this point.
Well, and so as we kind of like wrap this up, obviously we just saw, this week has been, this year, this month, everything has been crazy, but this week especially, starting with what happened in Venezuela and that being rather shocking, and then also obviously what just happened in Minneapolis. I am hearing from a lot of people, and they're just rightfully very scared, very worried, very rattled, wondering what to do. And I know, we talk about this just personally a lot. You just have to do something and like get involved. What would you say to people in my DMs who are like, oh, I'm so scared. What can we do?
Mm-hmm. It's not to be dismissive, but it's easy. It's like start a potluck group. It's go to the park. I know in Iowa and Wisconsin in the middle of January, going to the park maybe isn't the best solution, but you have like that cute ass little village play cafe. That's my freaking dream. But it truly is just like find 3 other people who are looking around to say like, I don't want to be alone in this. We don't have all the answers, right? We have a very robust, wonderful little group chat. We don't have all the answers, but to know that we have a place to say like, oof, I'm really feeling it today, and have somebody else go, yep, so am I. Here's what I'm doing. Like, so tonight there's a community potluck, and I was like, I'm going to take my daughter. We're going to go have some garlic bread with some of our neighbors and maybe meet some new people who are also weary and scared, but looking for a community. And like, that's it. It seems so easy because it is. And like, we don't want to believe that like an easy community potluck is a solution, but that is like the first step.
It's not only the solution for democracy, maybe, but also for my dinner problems. When did we stop having potlucks and like getting together with our community and our neighbors so much? Because I remember growing up and going to those, but like I don't really do that as an adult. And I think we need to bring the potluck back. If for anything, it's like so we don't have to figure out dinner every night.
Yeah. Because like I can bring like salsa and a bag of chips, or I can bring like a heat and eat garlic bread. Like that's no problem. But if Marge down the street is going to make a casserole that feeds 40 people, I'm going to be there.
Even if it's like a group chat with some neighbors, so somebody can like keep them updated and split up what you guys are kind of watching and doing, because you can probably speak to this better than anybody. You know, a lot of the stuff I think that fuels people's anxiety is coming down from the top. It is Trump and the administration and all of the federal things, because that's the loudest. That's what the algorithms prioritize. It is important. Obviously, it's our nation. But the biggest impact and most immediate impact can be done really locally. Small.
Yeah.
Right?
Go to a PTA meeting, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe there are some like people who are like, whoa, I don't know if we're in the same, but you both care about your kids. You both care about your kids' school. You both care about teachers having what they need to be successful, right? So like get really small. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to run for an elected office.
And I will say from experience, I joined the PTO this year. My son's in kindergarten now. And joined is like, I say that loosely because I have been to maybe half of the meetings, probably not even half. And I just realized yesterday I missed one. But that's fine. You just show up when you can. You know what I mean? It's not like, and just learn more and meet people. And maybe next year I will have an 80% attendance rate. And who knows, maybe when he's in second grade, I will be on the PTO. I don't know. But that's how it starts. And you don't have to you don't have to be perfect. You can just show up when you can, as you can.
Yeah.
With a dish.
And say like, I'm really glad I was able to be here. Thanks for letting me join you. I just
Irish exit out the back when it's.
My husband does that, and it used to really stress me out. I'm like, that's so rude. You can't. And he's like, they don't care.
Well, I cannot handle. I don't know if you have this in Iowa because it is the Midwest, but I can't handle the Midwest goodbye.
Is it the thigh slap and the
Yeah, the 30 minutes of goodbyes is just, I don't even touch it. I just leave. I can't do that. I love everyone, but I'm not doing that.
Were you born and raised in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
And you don't do that's some like level 36 trauma.
My mom was a public teacher, 5th grade teacher for, 30, 40 years. I don't know how many. And so she knows everybody, and everybody knows her and she's always chatting. And so as a kid, I was just like, it was like, Mom, can we go? And so now I'm just like, oh, I can't deal with this. I'm out. Email me or something.
And I'm the same. That's the exact same thing, but the opposite solution. Where I'm like, but you have to. It's what you do. Oh
my gosh, that is so funny.
I just realized that I want to do the 6 degrees of separation of our moms. I bet we could find
That is amazing. That would be a fantastic project. Very entertaining.
Huh?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we need to dig into the life of our moms.
Yeah, because my mom can find somebody that she knows everywhere.
My mom, if anybody here knows Kiel, Wisconsin, it's a very tiny town in Wisconsin. This is sort of Iowa coded. My mom was the corn and bean queen at the Corn and Bean Festival in Kiel, Wisconsin.
Corn and beans is like all Iowa does.
I know. Maybe they're only 3 degrees separated. Senator Catelin Drey from Iowa. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for always giving us hope and keeping us on track and bringing that eldest daughter, maid of honor energy to every interaction. I'm so excited to watch you in action when the session starts and watch you win your re-election.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I get to do all this all over again in a much longer time frame.
Do your plug of what you need from people. How can they find out more about you and maybe donate to help you out?
DreyForIowa.com, DreyForIowa.com, and you can click on that little donate button if you are so inclined. I promise I will not spam you with texts or emails. I think it actually says that on the donation page. I really was reluctant to sign up for Act Blue because of the the texts, but then that's also how a lot of people found me. And so it's a necessary evil, and I'm very sorry about that. I hate asking for money. This is.
But you can also, I'm sure there's a P.O. box or something, and if you want to, you can write a check. And
you totally can. Yep, P.O. Box 2316, Sioux City, Iowa 51106.
Keep an eye on Catelin Drey. She is the rising star in the political sphere and the group chat. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend who could use a little hope. And make sure you're subscribed to Motherhood for Good wherever you listen to podcasts and or on YouTube. You can also find more on Instagram at Motherhood for Good. But yeah, we gotta just keep going, and we will. So thank you again. Have a good day and keep the faith.